The lights of the arena illuminated a man with calm posture, deep gaze, and calculated movements. He was not just a boxer, he was a master of turning violence into art, of transforming punches into poetry. In an age marked by racial segregation, he raised his fists as if he were also lifting an entire people. Every jab, every slip was more than technique. It was a silent manifesto against prejudice. His chest rose and fell slowly, shoulders squared, eyes burning with quiet determination. His name would echo forever in boxing history as the Old Master, the genius who inspired generations. This is the story of Joe Gans. Baltimore, 1874. A port city full of contrast, the smell of the sea mixed with tobacco factories and ironworks, and on the streets, black children ran barefoot while carrying the invisible weight of segregation. It was there that Joseph Cyphus Butts, later known as Joe Gans, was born. Son of a humble family, he grew up hearing that the path for a black man was narrow, almost always limited to hard labour. But Joe was different. He observed the world in silence, eyes flicking, body tense, absorbing every detail, as if studying life the same way a fighter studies his opponent. As a teenager, he began fighting in makeshift rings across Baltimore. The ground was hard, the crowd rowdy, and the fights often closer to brawls than to sport. But while others drowned in brutality, Joe sought precision. His movements were fast, calculated, almost cold, a sharp exhale accompanying each dodge, muscles coiled like springs, anticipation written on his face. By the mid-1890s, Joe Gans was no longer just another young man from Baltimore. With worn gloves and little protection, he faced anyone who stood across from him, sometimes even two in the same day. His calmness in the ring contrasted with the fury of his opponents. While they attacked with rage, Gans responded with intelligence. One step back, one clean punch, the precision of a man who seemed to see the future in slow motion. His fists moved like poetry, yet each strike carried weight, leaving the crowd holding their breath. In 1895, he proved his courage by winning 2 fights in a single afternoon, a feat that began to catch the attention of the newspapers. The nickname Old Master was born soon after, when journalists realised that despite his youth, Joe fought like a seasoned veteran, dominating time and space. Recognition spread quickly. Soon he left the improvised rings to face respected names in New York and Philadelphia. What impressed wasn't only his technique, but the almost mystical serenity, a stillness around him that made the audience lean in, sensing the storm contained within. By the turn of the century, Joe Gans was recognised as one of the most skilled lightweights in the country, but the greatest dream still escaped him, the world title. His first chance came against Frank Erne, the reigning champion. Gans fought with bravery, muscles straining, sweat sliding down his brow, but an eye injury forced him to stop. Many thought it would be the end of his climb. For Joe, it was only the prelude. 2 years later, in 1902, they met again. This time, there was no doubt. With precise strikes and chilling composure, Gans battered Erne until the champion fell, bleeding, eyes wide, unable to rise. At that moment, a quiet exhale escaped Gans, chest swelling with restrained triumph. He became the first African-American born in the United States to win a world boxing title. The reign that followed would be historic. 6 years as champion, 15 title defences, victories over feared contenders, and performances that enchanted crowds. But no fight would symbolise his greatness more than the epic battle against battling Nelson in 1906 in the Nevada desert. Goldfield, September 1906. In the middle of nowhere, thousands travelled for miles to witness the showdown promoted by Tex Rickard. The sun scorched, sweat-burned eyes, and in the centre stood 2 men, Joe Gans, the serene champion, and battling Nelson, the durable Dane, famous for his near-inhuman endurance. The fight wasn't just long, it was a war of resistance, strategy, and spirit. Round after round, Nelson pressed forward like a wall, absorbing punches that would have flattened anyone else. But Gans, with the patience of a surgeon, jabbed, countered, and picked, muscles trembling under strain. Heart hammering yet mind razor sharp, the crowd gasped and murmured as sweat, blood, and determination mingled in the sweltering air. It lasted 42 rounds. When Nelson finally fell defeated, Gans did not raise his arms in ecstasy. He simply stood there, chest heaving, fists unclenching slowly, eyes scanning the horizon as if grounding himself after a storm. That afternoon, in the desert dust, Joe Gans cemented his legend. But greatness always comes with a cost. After years at the top, Joe's body began to falter. He was already carrying the invisible shadow of tuberculosis in his lungs, yet he still accepted fights under unfair conditions imposed by white promoters and rivals. In 1908, in a rematch with battling Nelson, he was forced to weigh in fully dressed at ringside, weakened by illness. He fought anyway, shoulders slumping with every blow, yet chin high, gaze steady, defying both disease and injustice. Inside the ropes, his skill still shone, but his strength was fading. He lost, not just to an opponent, but to the cruelty of circumstance. The public saw only the result. Few realized the man they watched was already dying slowly. Outside the ring, segregation denied him the full rewards of his glory. The old master endured, but the weight of the world pressed heavier on his shoulders, his back straight yet burdened, eyes shadowed by the invisible chains of a divided nation. By 1910, at just 35, Joe Gans had no strength left. Consumed by tuberculosis, he returned to Baltimore, spending his final days surrounded by family and the few who understood his greatness. His body was frail, but his dignity remained untouched. Chest shallow, hands trembling slightly, yet the mind still unbroken. When he died in August of that year, crowds filled the streets for his funeral. On his grave, a monument was placed with his true name, Joseph Gant. The misprint that transformed him into Joe Gans had never been corrected, but by then, the name had already become eternal. Decades later, his battle with Nelson would be remembered as one of the greatest fights in boxing history, and his refined, almost scientific style would influence generations to come. For Nat Fleischer, founder of Ring magazine, he was simply the greatest lightweight of all time. For the black community of his era, he was more than that. A symbol of hope in a world built to deny it, eyes glistening with pride, chest swelling as hearts across the nation lifted with. Imagine the silence before the opening bell, fixed stare, the calm breath, the mind sharp as a blade. Joe Gans fought like that, as if turning each second into eternity. More than a century later, his name still resounds, not just as a champion but as a pioneer. He proved that boxing could be more than brute force. It could be intelligence, artistry, science. He proved that a black man, even in the chains of segregation, could reach the very top of the world. Today, his statue rests in Madison Square Garden, where fighters tap his extended fist for luck before stepping into the ring, their hands brushing cold bronze, eyes reflecting awe. But the truth is, it wasn't luck that made Joe Gans a legend. It was discipline, courage, and an almost supernatural calm in the face of adversity. He did not live long enough to witness the full impact of his work, but every jab, every slip, every victory still echoes. Joe Gans was not only the old master, he was, and remains, the very soul of boxing, chest rising and falling, with the rhythm of history itself.